I like that permission that pops up, Laura.
Mm-hmm.
Jen, I might have to ask you how you make that happen.
Yeah, it's the default setting for us at ACES Connection. Like even our internal meetings, it always does that. All right, so yeah, if you put in the chat where you're from and what you do. England, woo! You get the furthest away ward, at least until New Zealand shows up, but welcome. Boston, Maine, nice. Vermont, Kansas, New York. Where's my West Coast folks? Philly, Delaware, nice. Oh, more England, excellent. Welcome. All right, Karina, you're in my land of LA, Richmond. We'll start in about 1 minute. People are still joining us, which is great. New Orleans.
It's nice to see these folks from Delaware.
Mm-hmm.
Woo woo!
Yeah, Delaware is doing a lot.
I lived there for 12 years.
Placerville.
New Orleans.
I
like
know.
it. Welcome, Kristen.
Lots of school support folks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think this will be a good session for you.
Well.
All right, so we're going to dive in because we got lots to share and we want to give you guys time to break out, and people I'm sure will just continue to join us. So Emily and I were doing a training in Vermont this week, and
not in actual Vermont.
Not, yeah, in virtual Vermont.
With people in Vermont.
I was still in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And it dawned on us that what we were sharing with them would be the perfect topic for today, because this is what we talked about. We talked about the Polybagel Theory and safety and notions of safety and how that relates to the anxiety and stress that adults are feeling as they start to plan, to go back to school in whatever way, shape, and form it looks like. So we thought we would bring that, at least a part of it. I mean, we do hours and hours and hours on this training, but this is a brief overview, introduction to the topic if you're not familiar. And then we want to set aside a good time at the end for us to break into kind of small groups of about 4 and really dig into a kind of meaty prompt and let you guys discuss. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to jump into the first slide. And feel free to always chat questions or thoughts in the chat, things that resonate for you, things you want to know more about, things that
this is
questions
good.
about. So I'm going to let Emily talk about this slide.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Super psyched to talk about Porges' stuff, and if I can't remember if I've talked about it before or not, but anyways, I think that I just want to say that I feel as though if you are really committed to doing trauma-informed work and or racial justice work, that understanding this theory is essential, because it's just in my opinion, much deeper dive into understanding the role of the body in human behavior and what Porges calls the physiological state. So when I am asked to speak about the polyvagal theory, I usually start with this particular little tiny, as succinct as Porges can be, this little tiny nugget that he offers about what the polyvagal theory is about. And so I'm going to read this for you, emphasizing the syllables that that need to be emphasized in this. And I just want you to notice as I read it to you, what happens for you in your body experience. So what I mean is, what's happening for you viscerally as you hear these words. So here goes. The polyvagal theory provides the vehicle for explaining the importance of physiological state as an intervening variable influencing behavior and our ability to interact with others. The theory provides an understanding of how risk and threat shift physiological state to support defense. The theory explains how safety is not the removal of threat, and that feeling safe is dependent on unique cues in the environment and in our relationships that have an active inhibition on defense circuits and promote health and feelings of love and trust. So that's a mouthful. But I mean, what I think would be really great, and maybe we did, I can't remember, Laura, if we did talk about this slide at the very beginning of doing these sessions or not, but what I'd love to have us do is, before we even break out and talk more, because we're going to dig into a couple more pieces of his theory, if folks want to chat in some initial thoughts, and even if you don't want to share anything cognitive, if you want to chat in briefly, just your first visceral reactions to listening to this. And it can be anything. And there are no wrong answers. So why don't we take a moment and let people do that? I'm going to grab his pocket guide because there's a little quote I want to read from that as well. Oh, Rita, I love that. Okay, I'm going to be checking out the chat here. Judith, you're sweet.
Yeah.
Good. Good. A comfort is felt. Good, Liz. I like that. Much easier to work with kids when we're not trying to reason with them. It feels validating. Tension mixed with hope. Yeah, Anne, I'm feeling you on that one. Very reassuring to think we don't have to try to remove all threats. Well, one of the things that, so part of the reason why I get into Porges's work so much is because for me, it really provided an alternative from a behaviorist cognitive perspective in children's behavior and adult behavior. So I definitely was that person that was trained in a lot of that kind of view of behavior, which is that we're always trying to avoid something or we're trying to obtain something that we want in some way. This is a completely different reframe of that because Porges essentially says that our physiological state is the intervening variable between the stimulus and the response. So I don't know if Laura included a couple slides about that, but I might have a couple things to show you that might provide a meaningful reframe on that or another way to explain it. Laura, is there something you want to add in here too? Are you thinking or are you seeing?
Just I think right now what always sticks with me in this quote is that the safety is not the removal of threat. Mm-hmm. It's not the same thing. Mm-hmm. And that, we're constantly scanning the environment for that sense of danger and safety, whether we know it or not. And that so much depends on our physiological state, and understanding that is so vital to doing this work in a trauma-informed way. I just want to even take that thread that you're pulling through and go a little deeper on that for a moment. So part of the reason why the removal of threat is not the same thing as experiencing safety or a felt sense of safety is that we can never know in a person's lived experience and in their legacy, their contextual legacy, what's going on for them in that moment. So what might appear to me in an environment as a cue, a neutral cue, may be for a person who is a person of color or a Black person or an older person. For them, it's a sign of danger or threat or risk or novelty. So that's the really important piece to remember.
I'm trying to get more fluid, have more language to talk, and Laura knows this because she's sick of listening to me talk about it. But she's just sick of listening to me talk about my struggle with this. But meaning I'm just trying to have more language and feel like I can explain things more fluidly. But I cannot recommend Rasma Menakam's work enough. And the reason for that is because when I'm reading and understanding how the intersection of racial trauma and the trauma that other forms of trauma, the thing that's missing in a lot of what I'm reading is this understanding of the body's wisdom, an understanding of that there's just so much that's happening at the body level that is not cognitive, it's not conscious, it's not volitional. And I still think that even in a lot of the trauma-informed framing and language and, when you read about like, well, what are you supposed to be doing? A lot of stuff still emphasizes relationships. And I'm really trying to help people to think deeper. Yeah, relationships absolutely matter, and making those relational efforts are very important. But we sometimes need to go deeper and really honor the biology of the body. And so much is being processed at that sensory, unconscious level. So yes, the book is this. That person is correct, Rasma Menachem. And he wrote My Grandmother's Hands. He's written a couple other books as well. But and if other people have recommendations for this somatic perspective on racialized trauma, and you can add that, I'd really love to know who else is writing and talking about this. Okay, so anyways.
And this comes up a lot in conversation around school resource officers, this perception of threat and safety, and how people view
Can we just do
security in the building, right? Like that is one of the clearest connections for me for students. So some students, if they've had only positive interactions with police in their community, they might see a school resource officer at school as safety. Other students, if they've only had negative or more traumatic experiences with police in their community, when they see a school resource officer at school, it doesn't feel safe. It feels like a threat in their body, whether they're conscious of it or not. And so I think this is really important, understanding this conversation around, things like metal detectors, school resource officers, locker searches, like what we perceive or act on as safety is perceived and felt as threat. And just keeping that in mind. So that was one of the things that came up.
I'm glad you brought that up too. I don't know which the next slide is, but I definitely want to talk about the importance of language around all this safety talk too, because this is something for us to think about. Yeah. All right, we'll go this route first though. So, okay, the polyvagal theory. So the way in which this is a new understanding or a new interpretation of human behavior is because Porges was the scientist to discover that, and I apologize if you all already know this or you've already heard this. I'm just going to do it one more time. But a lot of times, we hear about the autonomic nervous system and how its functioning is part and parcel of what our fight, flight, and freeze reactions. So Porges discovered that we don't just have two branches of the autonomic nervous system. We actually have two circuits within a singular branch of it. So you've heard of the sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system, which is responsible for fight and flight. And then we have the parasympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system. That branch has two distinct circuits. One is the ventral vagal circuit, which is the more recently evolved circuit that allows us as a mammal to be social. And like we have these highly sophisticated biological capacities that are actually all a part of our anatomical structures, predominantly in the face, in the eyes, in the throat. A lot of these features of our faces are all about supporting and recruiting this ventral vagal circuit, which is what allows and gives rise to spontaneous prosocial behavior. So when that circuit is activated, that's the time when we're experiencing a felt sense of safety. So you feel it in your body. You know, when you're with someone who's like maybe a good friend, or maybe it's a spouse, or maybe it's a child or whatever, and you feel like you can just kind of let down and it feels good to be with that person, your ventral vagal system, circuit is like, you know, completely, that puppy's pulsating. However, if you notice that there's something that happens to you and all of a sudden you're sort of out of the present moment and you're pretty like out of it, numbed out, you know, it's kind of like when you're driving your car and you get somewhere and you're like, oh shit, I totally didn't go where I was supposed to go. Like, how did that happen? Like, where the heck am I? You know, you dissociated in that moment of driving because you just became automatic. And it wasn't a conscious thing. It was just something your body just remembered to do. And you just went maybe to where you always go. And that wasn't where you were supposed to go. So that can happen when our more ancient pathway that has been synonymous with our survival as a species, that can be when the dorsal vagal circuit is activated. Now that usually occurs more when when our bodies are experiencing a high degree of lethal threat. Let me just say this for a second. Perception is all in the individual, okay? So we can have, I don't even like to call it faulty perception because that sounds judgy, but some people's bodies may perceive a cue of lethal threat that other bodies don't see as such. Police officers are literally are a perfect example of this. It is much more likely that white bodies are going to perceive the police as there for protection, and that Black bodies don't associate it with that, may even associate it or likely to associate it with lethal threat. So when these things happen, when the body deems something is a lethal threat, we go into shutdown. That's like what happens. So if you're noticing that like students aren't engaging or a colleague is not engaging, it's quite possible that something has shifted in their physiological state to support that high degree of defense and protection. So it's just, I mean, when I train people about these sorts of things, really I'm trying to actually help them more reflect on their own experience and what's going on for them and their bodies, and less about what's happening for their students. Because once you get to understand your own body and what's happening for you in various circumstances, you start to see the world through that lens too. And it just comes much more fluidly, and you just interpret things differently.
And we always say, right, that a dysregulated adult can't help regulate a dysregulated kid, right? 100%. So this is what that means. That adult needs to start to understand their own physiological response and what it feels like in their body, and become more aware and practiced at this, so that your practice also at quickly regulating yourself before you react.
And if folks are interested in this is why I wrote the Regulated Classroom. That's why I developed this approach, is to help people understand this theory and how it applies to them as an educator in a school environment. So if you're looking for more information, there's some on my website, or you can reach out to me or whatnot.
I'll add it to the chat.
Okay, thank you. So, okay, I've just been like verbal, like diarrheaing on everybody. I've just been like, polybagel. We'll just do a little bit more, and then I'll stop and give you guys all a chance to process this information. Sorry that it's coming at you so quick. So when I was saying that the perception resides in the individual's body, that's really something that's important for us to keep remembering as we return to school. And it might even be important for you to really think about this for yourself. Because let's say you're in a district where you are going to have to come back in person, and you are really struggling with that. Like you know, even thinking about that starts to get your whole engine going. You know, your heart rate is, and you can feel your throat closing, and you feel like you might have a panic attack or whatnot. Just know that your body is associating the return to school or being in person or whatnot with a high degree of potential lethal threat, or a high degree of threat rather, in danger. And so you're having a very normal reaction, physiological reaction to that kind of circumstance, that kind of reality. And this is not conscious, this is not you consciously choosing to be difficult, resistant, a wimpy, any of that stuff. This is just at this point in time, you know, given the circumstances in the world. And you want me to restate that? Oh God. All right, what I'm trying to say is that if you're noticing, and it was funny because when we were doing this training with Vermont, they were saying, like, you know, a lot of the administrators in the room are really struggling with even thinking about making any of what we were discussing applied in the plan that they're doing, because they themselves are so charged at this point about the reality of having to do anything that they can't think straight. So what I'm trying to tell everyone, or what I'm trying to remind folks, is that you're having a completely normal stress reaction to an abnormal circumstance. I know that's not what I said exactly, Anne, but that's what I'm trying to get at. And none of that is a conscious decision on your part. You cannot at this point help the fact that your body is associating school with potential lethal threat. Okay, I mean, so this is like a very much a reality. That doesn't mean that you can't shift that, but I'm just saying that that reaction that you're having is a very normal biological response to lethal threat. So this thing is a doozy. This pandemic and all that else also is occurring is just, there's just so much threat in the environment. It's very real. So maybe this illustration will help.
Yeah.
We use this often in our training. So I want you to notice a couple different things. First, I want you to look at that little squiggly line that's in the middle of the chart. And what that represents is the body cycling through, modulating through activation and settling in the autonomic nervous system. So the up is supposed to represent sympathetic charge or arousal, and the down is supposed to represent parasympathetic, you know, ventral vagal kind of stuff. That's right, Kaylin. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's not a character issue. Sorry, she was squirrel. The problem with the chat popping up, right? So I want you to see that. So this illustration is essentially communicating to us that when we experience that nice modulation in our nervous systems, then we can be in the ventral vagal state. We can be that's a regulated physiological state. And as you can see with the descriptions that are in that green area, joy, groundedness, curiosity, compassion, they should also put learning in that green box as well. All things that we want to be happening in our classrooms and in our schools occurs when we're experiencing a collective state of regulation. And I call that collective synchrony. But if instead our bodies start to perceive a degree of threat can be threat, danger, novelty. So newness is also often experienced as threat in the body. And risk, those things then recruit more ancient pathways, more pathways associated with our long-standing survival. So then we become defense mobilized and we may fight or flight. And if we get really overwhelmed, we shut down, we go into freeze. Okay, so that's what this illustration is helping you to see. What we might look like, collectively speaking, or what I'm anecdotally, you know, seeing, is that on the left-hand side, you've got two illustrations here. The left-hand illustration is intended to illustrate an autonomic nervous system that has poor heart rate variability, meaning that an individual does not have, physiological resilience. They really aren't able to come back to their baseline easily. They get triggered by something that sends them, that overwhelms their body, and then they become defense mobilized, and then they might rapidly drop from that place and then be aroused, over aroused again. So Rasma in his book, I should get royalties from like this guy doesn't even know I'm promoting him as much as I have been promoting him, but I'm kidding, by the way. But he talks about this so much, just in terms of that we right now are likely to have a very titrated window of tolerance. So if you folks have read that kind of language before in Dan Siegel's work, the way in which that is thought about from a somatic perspective is that we're walking around this pandemic, this racial crisis, this economic crisis. These things are changing our physiological resilience. They're narrowing our window of tolerance, which is why, and that's why, like Laura and I just keep saying it over and over and over again, we are going to have to focus so much on regulation when we return to schools. Even before relationships, we've got to really, these things are more fluid than that, but we've really got to figure out, like, what are we doing to prioritize that?
Yeah.
Because we're dysregulated masses as a result of all that's going on.
Exactly.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm just going.
No, just another image, right? That another way we try to think of all the different ways.
Well, this is sort of a hierarchical image of what happens. Like if we have plenty of cues of safety, which we don't currently, but if we did, then we're, happy-go-lucky, and then we can become defense mobilized. And if we get too overwhelmed, then we go into shutdown. So this is, okay, I'm gonna make this point about language right now. This is really, really important. In fact, I was just reviewing, Harvard just issued this, this whole guidance for schools. Harvard University just issued a document around guidance for schools and return to school. And even those folks who are supposed to be the experts are conflating language here. Safety, when we're talking about safety in terms of a trauma-informed understanding or framework, that is a felt sense of safety in the body, okay? That is separate and distinct from things that we may need to do in order to ensure health and and to take health precautions. It may be separate and distinct from the things we need to do to protect our schools from violence. So those things are security measures. Those things are protection measures. We need to be very, very deliberate in the use of our language, because when we muddy the waters, we can be doing things that we call, or we say are in the name of safety, that actually will cause a lot of damage to our capacity to regulate and to relate. And so then you can forget learning. So I think it's, this is one of the things we left with Vermont the other day, is just when you write your plan, be specific in your terminology. What are you doing to try to generate a felt sense of safety in your environment, in your schools, in your school community? And what are you doing to honor the need to take serious health precautions? Those things need to be thought about separately and distinctly, and then they need to be considered sort of mutually. Like, okay, can we really do all this stuff and, to protect our health, and at the same time honor our needs to experience safety in a school environment in order for our students and our staff to be available for teaching and learning?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't even know what time it is.
We're good. We've only got like 2 more. Yep. So and then we're going to let them loose. So this was that other.
Oh yeah, this is so good. So this is what I'm talking about. I'm going to read this one to you too. I hope it's okay. We're doing story hour. I did a lot of work in elementary schools for a long time. Polyvagal theory challenges the parameters that our educational, legal, political, religious, and medical institutions use to define safety. This is exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep.
By moving to defining features of safety from a structural model of the environment with fences, metal detectors, and surveillance monitoring to a visceral sensitivity model evaluating shifts in the neuroregulation of the autonomic state, the theory challenges our societal values regarding how people are treated. The theory forces us to question whether our society provides sufficient and appropriate opportunities to experience safe environments and trusting relationships. And if for those people who have their equity lens on right now, or the racial equity lens on, you can see where there is a lot of intersection here with what he's describing and then the ways in which we actually function currently. This was written pre-pandemic. So, obviously this was in the age of like, thinking about all that we were doing to prevent terrorism or school shootings or whatnot. You add that other layer now of like all that we have to do to take health precautions to stop the spread of the virus or to diminish the spread of the virus. And that's a whole nother layer. So, okay. Is there any other one?
The prompts.
Okay. All right. So these are the prompts. We'll break folks out and they can chat about this for a few minutes. What do you hear? Okay, first of all, because I've been like frenzied with you, you probably can feel that energy in your own body. Because like our physiological states, they're contagious. So the fact that I'm like, is going to likely be activating or arousing your system. And it may be too much. You may be overwhelmed by me right now because I'm so excited to share all of this that I have a hard time containing myself. So be alive in that and think about, what do we need? What do you need in order to experience a felt sense of safety in your body? So actually, I'd say for right now, forget the kids, forget the other staff members or your district, and reflect on, what do you think you would need? What would you actually need in order to experience centeredness, feeling grounded, feeling at ease for the fall return? All right. Why don't we give folks like, can we do 8 minutes actually? Because I see folks asking like, can we talk about like, what do you do and blah, 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 which is a really valid question.
And I think that this leads into that question, like, what can we do? We want you to be creative, knowing what the framework we just set out, right? What things can we do? What do you need? Thinking about what you need to feel safe and connected can help you bridge that thinking, because there isn't a checklist, right? Yes, we can provide you with some specifics and we will before we go, but really we need you to be creative about knowing this. What do you need to be safe? What structures do you know?
Yep.
Right, Emily?
What helped, yes, absolutely. What helps to create, and you will see some themes will emerge from that if people come back and share it.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and break them out. I'm gonna stay with you, Laura, if that's okay.
Yep, we'll stay in the main room. So break out into groups of 4, Jenna, I think.
Okay, sounds good.
And then we'll come back in 8 minutes.
All right, I'm gonna actually, I need to, well, all right, maybe I won't. I was gonna go maybe scarf down some food. I'm starving. I
got 8 minutes
before this and hangry.
Let me show, I think there's only one more slide.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay, so 2 more. So there's the key points when I put in there, and then this the big meaty prompt at the end, right?
Okay, yeah.
So hopefully what I'd like to do, if we have time, is have another breakout with this one. What do you think?
I wonder, since it's only 33 people, if we could actually do it collectively, like in
this one.
Group. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have time to maybe do another breakout.
I know, that's what I'm worried about, as always.
Yeah.
Never enough time.
I feel like it's flying.
Okay.
The dysregulated classroom. It could be called that.
And I think we're still recording. Let me see if I can pause.
Yeah.
All right, welcome back everyone as you start to filter back in. Almost everyone is back.
So as you're coming back in, if folks want to like either verbally share out some of what was discussed in your groups, or if you want to chat it in, we'd love to just
I'm going to unmute you if you just if you raise your hand.
Yeah, I'm gonna look through and see if people raise your hand and be brave. All right.
And
Sangeet,
I wanted to,
Sangi had her hand raised.
Awesome.
I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Feel free to correct me. Okay, good.
All right.
Hello, everyone. Yep. Hi. Hi, Emily. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Sangi.
So great to see you guys. Yeah, our group had some really great conversation around, we need that safe space at our workplaces in small groups to have like conversations and tell our stories about what we're going through without feeling judged. And before that, we also need that opportunity to connect as human beings. So we talked about, what does like bike riding together look like? What is that bike riding together going to look like for everybody? And then we also kind of like had this big question, right? Is how do you create a felt sense of safety if you have a child at home who is entering into distance learning now, like in most places, schools are starting out with distance learning, and the adult, you as the parent, have to go to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is that felt sense of safety that you're going to need if you're a parent? I have to go to work, and I also feel like I need to be at home to support my child, and I know I can't be in both places at the same time. So we just kind of that question was posed, and we don't really have any firm answers.
Right. And that's a great point that we wanted to include, that we're not proposing to have all the answers for you, but we really wanted to make sure that we introduced this frame, this idea as you guys continue to plan and proceed, so that you would have it as part of your toolbox. But certainly we don't have all the solutions to these super complex problems that we're wrestling with. I did put Emily and I and our great colleague James Moffat, who's a elementary school principal in Kansas. We are doing a conference next week that is 9 hours of this kind of content. So I put that in the chat, not trying to just sell you on anything, but we are able to go so much deeper than what these 1 hours allow us to. All right, what else? Did anyone else want to share with their group?
I'm gonna look for hands.
Yeah.
Anybody brave enough or wants to chat in their response?
Janet. Just hang on, let Jenna unmute you.
Okay, I just unmuted you, Janet.
She's still muted.
She's still muted. Hold on, Janet Rouse. There we go.
Okay. I think we did it at the same time. Shebra was mentioning what her role is a little bit about physical activity, and I think we touched on a couple of things to do with just physicality. So I mentioned breathing, and she didn't get much of a chance to start talking about that, but I think that would be something interesting to hear more about. And I think from the, it seems like everybody's sector has something unique and different. There's the parents going back to work, and there's the teachers going back to work. I mean, there's just every single level has all these little stressors. And so, what do we bring, and how do we show up when we haven't addressed what's going on inside? And so, and I'm sorry, I forgot our leader, if she was a leader, the psychologist's name, but you know, she had just come from exercising herself. So that's, you know, good modeling of that behavior.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you're bringing this up, Janet, because there are sort of things that help us to regulate our physiological state, and you're naming a couple of them. One is exercise, but in particular exercise, which most exercise is this, patterned, repetitive kinds of activities are what rhythmic patterned, repetitive activities are what helps us to regulate. And so that's why, you know, there's those crazy people who love to jog, which I don't get it, but they do. and I think it has to do with that patterned rhythm. But there's lots of things that I know I enjoy doing, like kayaking and stuff, and that has a natural rhythm to it, and playing tennis and all those kinds of things. So exercise is a form, breathing, but in particular, focusing on a longer exhalation, because the exhaling is actually what stimulates the parasympathetic. You know, what's really interesting is, I don't know what, I read this in 2 different places, but gurgling water actually stimulates the ventral vagal circuit. Go figure. Singing, and I know you're not really supposed to do that right now, like around people because of sterilization or whatever, but if you're singing by yourself or humming or chanting, all of those things that stimulate your vocal cords can have a regulating impact on your physiology. The Regulated Classroom Guidebook that I've written has 60 different practices that are about trying to help teach teachers how to regulate their physiological state and how to do that with students. But you know, if that's something, if this is a new concept for you and you start really looking into it, you'll find quite a bit. What's most important is to find what works for you.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
and that's not you, and that's individual, right?
And that's, you know, like Emily, someone's mentioned Emily's book, The Regulated Classroom. This is a lot of that is what she's talking about through most of that book, is these activators and settlers and connectors, the things that we can do, the actual strategies that we can use to regulate ourselves and our students.
Absolutely, Caitlin. She said being outside, that's such an amazing sensory experience. And yeah, I mean, there's so much that the field of occupational therapy can teach us about learning to regulate our states.
So before we run out of time, which we always do, we wanted to share just a couple key points with you, and then we have another prompt that hopefully we can have a little time together to discuss. So prioritizing regulation and relationships and connection and community as we plan, and that relationships over rigor and connection before correction is the frame that we think through. And making space for sharing the stories and grief of our experience. So what happened to you during this time? Asking staff, tell us something that happened to you, or an experience that you want to share. And same with students, giving them space to share what has happened to them. And making this a whole school approach. Making policies proximate to the pain, so that if we make our policies based on those that are most vulnerable, it will benefit everyone. And empathy and support for staff. That's one of the things that I've been thinking about so much over the last 2 weeks, and why we focused on this particular area of safety and regulation. I think for the last 2 weeks, it's just so much grace and empathy is needed right now, and people have very small windows of tolerance and are being activated so easily, and there's just so much unkindness going around, and frustration and less tolerance, when we need to actually have so much more right now with ourselves and with those around us. And then last, okay, this one. So I just want to leave this with you to read for a second, and I'm actually going to put it in the chat and then stop sharing my screen. But considering the core safety message of the Polyvagal Theory, the CDC guidelines, the 6 pillars of trauma-informed care, and the developmental needs of kids, what are some creative ideas for cultivating safety and social connection in the classroom and in our school community, both adults and with kids? What ideas do you have to share with each other? So I'm going to put that in the chat, And I'm going to stop sharing so that we can see each other. Anybody have anything they want to put in the chat or just share out loud? Liz.
Hi, just a thought as everybody was talking, I'm envisioning all of us, our educators, we often talk about the kids come into their, with a school with the backpack on. I feel like we're all coming in with a backpack on. We don't even know now what's in our backpack. We used to talk, I'm a school counselor, elementary, and I used to try to pretend we'd know the simple things that were in our most vulnerable population's backpack. Well, now we all have them. And I feel like we're walking into a school backpack on, and we're walking into a room where we're being handed 5 more backpacks, or not, just being asked to carry even more things. And so if I had a magic wand, it would be, I don't feel like our educational system is set up with time or space for us to unload. Unfortunately, it's a sad reality. As a school counselor, I'm trying to roll out a mindfulness practice on staff first more than ever, so it can roll down to kids. So I guess what my answer would be is trying to model and invite the practice of compassionate listening. Mm. I almost feel like if we are going back to brick and mortar, slow, pausing, and listening, and that's magic wand wishing right there. But I just picture us all with—
That's okay.
So anyway, that's it. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. We want you to share, your great ideas, even if they seem far away, because we have to aim for that, I think. Absolutely, that's great. Anyone else? Yeah, creating space for children to share their stories.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's really, really important. Even if it's not verbal, even if it's through art or drawing or drama or any of that, or play. Mm-hmm. One of the things was listening to Liz speak, and I know I'm sort of feeling this as well, but there's so much that's really changing right now where we feel in the past that we've been stuck, like we can't make things be different. And Liz, I feel you because I was a school counselor, like that's, so I was always like, social emotional people, come on, we gotta do this. And people are always like, yeah, okay, whatever, there's academics, that's what matters. But I do sort of feel like this is a different time, and it might require us to think differently about who do we need to be speaking to that may be willing to hear things differently right now. I do feel like people's ears are tuned differently than they were 6 months ago or pre-pandemic. So even though we can have those experiences that make us feel like things aren't any different, I think there is more wiggle room in our systems for adaptation and for reprioritization that is so desperately needed. So desperately needed.
Yeah.
You don't think so, Rita?
Jenna, you can unmute her. Hold on.
You mute?
Oh my God, no. I'm like, talk more. Who are these decision makers? We know this stuff. We know this stuff. Listen,
I know. I'm like, who's holding the reins on the standards? Who's holding the reins on the testing?
As you're shaking on my head, what's that? It's like,
I know. I feel this. I almost feel like they're ghosts. Somebody's got to write that. It's like the phantoms of the reign of the Common Core. Like, who are these people?
No, we got to get a SEL. I don't know. I'm so glad that we are even talking, because who do we talk to? Everybody's going to look at us like we're crazy, cuckoo. What are we talking about? We got to get back to academics. Like, we can't.
No.
Yes.
We're completely dysregulated from the top to the bottom. We're already dysregulated. How do we even go back? Oh my gosh.
We're with you. And I think that's why we keep having this conversation, because the more champions we can build, the more voices that can be heard, the more people that keep talking about this, the less we seem cuckoo crazy, right? The less we seem that we're out of it. And I still strongly believe that we have a window right now where people are more willing to listen than they were before. And
Janet had her hand up as well. Read out
Awesome.
what you said.
Who had their hand up?
Can you unmute Janet?
Sure.
Here I am. It just, I see hope in all of this because, you know, everything that all of you commit to all the time with social emotional needs and learning, you know, yeah, it seems like it's always been, you know, we all know that it's the most important thing, but it's been kind of on the back burner and it's not in the front of mind when you're talking about numeracy and literacy. And so, you know, if anything has brought all of these events to the forefront, you know, COVID and protests and equity certainly has. And so nobody can learn if they're dysregulated. You know, nobody can teach, you know, nobody can show up with a full heart and, you know, openness. So it's going to have to be dealt with, and it's going to have to become front of mind and front of what people put out there. I mean, and if, you know, the people that make those decisions don't realize it now, they're going to realize it soon. And all of you are going to be there to help.
Right, right. Because I totally agree with you that even if they aren't taking this into consideration as they dive back in, there will be that moment of reckoning. Where they may be like, whoa. And then they're looking to all of our school support people and these advocates and these champions that we have out there for help. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else that really wants to share before we have to leave? It is 1 o'clock. It always goes so quickly. But we will continue the conversation next week. You have the ability to save the chat. If you click on the 3 dots on the side, you can save the chat for yourself. These are recorded. So if you go to the ACEs in Education homepage, there's a little widget on the side that has all of we have our own YouTube channel now. So all of these education related ones are in one place. So you can always send people there. Thank you, Jenna, for putting in the link. And thank you, Jenna, for all your wonderful hosting. We so appreciate you. I couldn't drive the ship and talk at the same time. It wouldn't be pretty. So I appreciate your steering. And with that, I will see you all next week. Be well, take care of yourselves.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, Laura. See ya.